I thought I was just fetching coffee and scheduling meetings for tech billionaire Harrison Vale, but when his fiancée's private island invitation landed in my hands instead of hers, I discovered a web of lies that would destroy an empire and change my life forever. This is my story. Before we dive into this incredible true story, hit that like button if you're ready for a tale of deception, karma, and justice. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories that will blow your mind. My name is Jasmine Brooks, and for 2 years, I was invisible. Not literally, of course, but in every way that mattered. In the gleaming towers of Manhattan's financial district, I had a Harvard MBA hanging on my apartment wall. But every morning, I walked into the chrome and glass offices of Vale Industries to fetch coffee, answer phones, and make sure Harrison Vale's life ran like clockwork. I was his executive assistant, which sounds impressive until you realize that in his world, I might as well have been furniture that happened to speak. Harrison Vale wasn't just rich, he was the kind of wealthy that makes Forbes lists and has buildings named after him. Tech mogul, venture capitalist, the man who could make or break startups with a single phone call. At 38, he had the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing the word no, and the charm that made people forget he was ruthless. He treated me well enough, I suppose, better than some of the other assistants in the building were treated, but there was always this invisible line between us, this reminder that I was there to serve, not to be seen. My days started at 6 in the morning and ended whenever Harrison decided they should end. I managed his calendar, screened his calls, organized his travel, and became an expert at reading his moods from across the room. I knew when he was about to fire someone before he did. I knew which deals were falling through before his business partners did. I knew everything about his professional life, and I thought I knew everything about his personal life too. That was my first mistake. Then, there was Victoria Sterling. If Harrison was Manhattan royalty, Victoria was its princess. Old money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. She had that effortless elegance that comes from never having to try, never having to prove anything to anyone. Blonde hair that always looked perfect. Clothes that cost more than most people's rent, and a smile that could freeze water when she looked at me. To Victoria, I wasn't even invisible. I was an inconvenience, something she had to navigate around, to get to what she wanted. Their relationship was a public relations dream, the tech titan and the socialite, photographed at galas and charity events. Their engagement announcement making the front page of the society section. But I saw them when the cameras weren't rolling. I heard their fights through his office door, watched Victoria's mask slip when she thought no one was looking. They were planning what the media called the wedding of the decade. But I could see the cracks in their perfect facade growing wider every day. The one thing Victoria wanted more than anything was to visit Harrison's private island, Serenity Cove, he called it, somewhere in the Caribbean. It was the Vale family's best-kept secret, a place where they could disappear from the world entirely. Victoria brought it up constantly, dropping hints about honeymoon destinations and romantic getaways. But Harrison always deflected, always had an excuse. The island was being renovated, the weather was bad, it wasn't the right time. His jaw would tighten whenever she mentioned it, and I filed that reaction away in the back of my mind. As his assistant, I handled all of Harrison's correspondence, bills, invitations, business proposals, personal letters. I organized them, prioritized them, made sure nothing important slipped through the cracks. So when an elegant cream envelope arrived addressed to V. Sterling with a return address from Serenity Cove, I didn't think twice about it. Victoria got mail at the office sometimes, usually invitations to events she wanted Harrison to attend. With her, I set it aside with her other correspondence, but something about the envelope nagged at me. The paper was expensive, hand-pressed, with a watermark I'd never seen before. The address was written in calligraphy, and there was something intimate about it, something that didn't match the formal invitations Victoria usually received. My curiosity got the better of me, and I did something I'd never done before in 2 years of working for Harrison. I opened someone else's mail. The invitation inside was breathtaking. Heavy cardstock with gold embossing, inviting V. Sterling to spend a week at Serenity Cove for a long overdue reunion. It was signed with a simple H and sealed with wax. But it wasn't the elegant design that made my hand shake as I held it. It was the tone. This wasn't a business invitation or a formal request. This was a love letter disguised as an invitation, intimate and personal in a way that made my cheeks burn. I should have sealed it back up, should have pretended I never saw it, but I couldn't stop staring at those words. Long overdue reunion. What reunion? Victoria had never been to the island. She'd been begging to go for months. So who was this V. Sterling? And why did Harrison write to her like she was already a part of his life there? When Harrison walked into the office an hour later and saw the opened envelope on my desk, his face went white. For the first time in 2 years, I saw Harrison Vale lose his composure completely. His hands were shaking as he grabbed the invitation, his eyes darting between me and the paper like he was trying to solve an impossible equation. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just opened someone else's mail. I had stumbled onto a secret that could destroy everything Harrison had built, including the perfect life he was about to marry into. The silence in that office was deafening. Harrison stood there clutching the invitation like it might disappear if he held it tight enough, and I could practically hear his mind racing. He cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and tried to slip back into his usual commanding presence. But I had seen behind the curtain now. The great Harrison Vale was terrified. "Jasmine," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "This was obviously delivered to the wrong address. I'll handle it from here." He moved to take the invitation, but something in his desperation made me pull back. For 2 years, I had been the perfect assistant, never questioning, never pushing, always invisible. But sitting there with that piece of paper in my hands, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. I went home that night and couldn't sleep. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter like it was radioactive, and I kept thinking about my grandmother's voice. She used to tell me that opportunities don't knock, they whisper, and you have to be listening to hear them. "Baby girl," she'd say, "sometimes the universe puts something in your path not by accident, but because it's time for you to step into who you're meant to be." 3 days later, I made a decision that would change everything. I called in sick to work, packed a small bag, and drove to the airport. I had never taken a vacation day in 2 years, had never even left the city without Harrison's permission. But I was done being invisible. I was done being safe. I was going to Serenity Cove. The flight to the Caribbean felt like stepping into another world. I had never flown first class before, had never been treated like someone who mattered. When the private car picked me up at the airport, the driver called me Miss Sterling, with such warmth that I almost corrected him. But something stopped me. For the first time in my life, I was going to be someone else, even if it was just for a few days. Serenity Cove was paradise. White sand beaches that stretched for miles, crystal clear water, and a mansion that looked like it had been carved from the island itself. The staff greeted me like I was coming home, like they had been waiting for me. A woman named Carmen hugged me tight and told me how beautiful I looked, how much she had missed me. I played along, smiling and nodding, but inside I was screaming. Who was I pretending to be? The house was filled with photographs, and as I walked through the rooms, I started to piece together a story that made my blood run cold. The pictures showed Harrison with a woman who looked exactly like Victoria, but wasn't Victoria. Same blonde hair, same elegant features, but there was something different about her eyes. They were softer, warmer, like she was actually happy, instead of just performing happiness. That evening, as I sat on the terrace watching the sunset, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around expecting to see one of the staff members, but instead, I came face to face with a ghost. The woman from the photographs was standing there, staring at me with the same shock I felt racing through my body. "You're not Victoria," she said quietly, and I realized I was looking at Victoria's twin sister. Her name was Vivian Sterling. And as we talked through the night, she told me a story that shattered everything I thought I knew about Harrison Vale. She was Victoria's identical twin, but they had been estranged for years after a family scandal. Harrison had met Vivian first, had fallen in love with her, but when he realized that Victoria was the one with the social connections he needed for his business, he had made a choice that destroyed 2 lives. For the past 2 years, while Harrison was building his public life with Victoria, he had been living a secret life with Vivian on this island. She had been hidden away like a dirty secret, visiting the island for weeks at a time while Victoria thought Harrison was on business trips. The staff knew her, loved her, treated her like the mistress of the house because in many ways, she was. "He promised me he would leave her after the wedding," Vivian said, tears streaming down her face. "He said it was all for show, that Victoria was just a business arrangement, but I've been watching the news, seeing their engagement photos, and I know he's never going to choose me. I'm just his secret, his escape from the real world." As she spoke, I felt a rage building inside me that I had never experienced before. I had spent 2 years facilitating this man's life, making his lies possible, helping him hurt people without even knowing it. Every time I had booked his business trips, I had been helping him cheat on his fiancée with her own sister. Every time I had covered for his absences, I had been protecting a man who was destroying the lives of everyone around him. But then, Vivian told me something that changed everything. She was pregnant. 3 months, along with Harrison's child, and he didn't even know yet. She had been planning to tell him during this visit, hoping it would finally force him to make a choice. Instead, she had found me, a stranger who had stumbled into the middle of her nightmare. That night, as I lay in the guest room listening to the waves crash against the shore, I realized that the universe hadn't put that invitation in my hands by accident. It had given me the power to expose a man who thought he was untouchable, to give justice to women who deserved better, and to finally step out of the shadows and into the light. The question was, what was I going to do with that power? The next morning, I woke up to find Vivian sitting on the beach, staring out at the ocean with her hand resting on her still flat stomach. She looked so fragile, so broken, that something inside me snapped. I had spent 2 years being the perfect assistant, the invisible woman who made everyone else's life easier, while my own dreams collected dust. But looking at Vivian, I realized I had a choice to make. I could go back to New York, pretend I had never seen this place, and continue living in the shadows. Or, I could do something that mattered. "We're going to take him down," I told her, sitting beside her on the sand. "Both of us, together." Vivian looked at me like I had lost my mind. "You don't understand, Jasmine. Harrison owns half of New York. He has lawyers, connections, power. People like us don't win against people like him." But I had something Harrison didn't know about. I had spent 2 years learning every detail of his life, every secret of his business, every weakness in his armor. I knew about the offshore accounts he thought were hidden, the deals he had made under the table, the corners he had cut to build his empire, and most importantly, I knew exactly when and where he would be most vulnerable. Victoria's wedding was 3 weeks away, the society event of the year, with 300 guests and media coverage that would make it front-page news. Harrison's reputation would be on full display, his perfect life showcased for the world to see. It was the perfect moment to reveal the truth. We spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. Vivian had kept every letter Harrison had written to her, every gift he had given her, every promise he had made. I used my access to his office computer to download financial records, recorded conversations on my phone, and photographed documents that showed the full extent of his deception. We built a case that would not only expose his affair, but reveal the financial crimes he had committed to fund his double life. The hardest part was acting normal when I returned to work. Harrison was suspicious, watching me carefully, but I had learned to be invisible for so long that slipping back into that role felt natural. I scheduled his meetings, organized his travel, and helped Victoria with the final wedding preparations, all while carrying the weight of what I knew. Every time Victoria talked about their future together, every time she smiled at him with genuine love, I felt sick. But I reminded myself that she deserved to know the truth before she tied her life to a lie. The wedding day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance New York society could muster. The ceremony was held at the Plaza Hotel, with flowers that cost more than most people's annual salary and a guest list that read like a who's who of American power. I wasn't invited, of course, I was just the assistant. But I was there anyway, standing in the back with the other staff members, watching Harrison promise to love, honor, and cherish a woman he had been systematically betraying for 2 years. As the ceremony ended and the guests moved to the reception, I felt my phone buzz. It was Vivian, texting me from the hotel room where she was waiting. "Are you ready?" she asked. I looked at Harrison, standing there in his perfect tuxedo, accepting congratulations from some of the most powerful people in the country, and I typed back, "It's time." Vivian walked into that reception like she owned the world. She was wearing a simple black dress that hugged her growing belly, and she moved through the crowd with a confidence I had never seen from her before. The guests started to murmur, confused by seeing what they thought was the bride in a different dress. Victoria, still in her wedding gown, went white as a sheet when she saw her sister approaching. But it was Harrison's face that I will never forget. The moment he saw Vivian, every mask he had ever worn fell away. He looked terrified, desperate, like a man watching his entire world crumble in real time. because that's exactly what was happening. Vivian didn't make a scene. She didn't scream or throw a drink or create the kind of drama you see in movies. She simply walked up to the head table, took the microphone from the bandleader, and told her story. She talked about love and betrayal, about promises and lies, about the child she was carrying and the man who had hidden her away like a shameful secret. She spoke with such quiet dignity that the room fell completely silent, every word carrying the weight of absolute truth. Then she introduced me. "And this is Jasmine Brooks," she said, "Harrison's assistant, who helped me gather the evidence you're about to see." I stood up, my heart pounding, and connected my phone to the hotel's sound system. For the next 10 minutes, Harrison Vale's own voice filled the room. His promises to Vivian, his admissions of moving money illegally, his casual dismissal of Victoria as just a business arrangement. The financial documents flashed on the screens around the room, showing exactly how he had funded his double life. By the time we finished, Harrison was gone. He had slipped out during the presentation, leaving behind his bride, his guests, and his reputation in ruins. Victoria sat at the head table in her wedding dress, mascara running down her cheeks, surrounded by the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But for me, it was the beginning of everything. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, Harrison Vale's empire began to crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. The SEC launched an investigation based on the financial evidence Vivian and I had provided. The media descended like vultures, turning every detail of his double life into front-page headlines. Tech mogul's island love nests exposed, Billionaire's twin sister scandal, wedding day bombshell destroys Vale dynasty. Harrison's stock price plummeted, his board of directors called for his resignation, and his investors fled faster than rats from a sinking ship. But the real karma came in the details. You see, Harrison thought he was so clever, so untouchable, that he had grown careless. The offshore accounts he used to fund Vivian's lifestyle, they were traced back to investor funds he had illegally diverted, the island paradise where he thought he could hide from the world. It was purchased with money stolen from employee pension funds. Every romantic gesture, every secret getaway, every promise he made to Vivian was built on someone else's suffering. Victoria filed for divorce before the ink was dry on the marriage certificate. She didn't want his money, didn't want his assets, didn't want anything that would tie her to the man who had humiliated her in front of everyone she had ever known. But Vivian got everything. The island, the house, the offshore accounts, and half of what remained of his legitimate assets. The courts ruled that since she was carrying his child and had been essentially his common-law wife for 2 years, she deserved compensation for the life he had stolen from her. Harrison tried to fight it, of course. He hired the best lawyers money could buy, claimed he was being blackmailed, insisted that Vivian had seduced him and I had manipulated the evidence. But the truth is a powerful thing, and we had so much truth that it buried him alive. The recordings didn't lie, the financial records didn't lie, the pregnancy test didn't lie, and the dozens of staff members from the island who came forward to testify about his double life, they didn't lie either. Within 6 months, Harrison Vale went from billionaire to bankruptcy. The man who had once commanded boardrooms and moved markets was facing 25 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. His sentencing hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in downtown Manhattan, and I made sure to be there. I wanted to look him in the eye one more time, to see if he finally understood what it felt like to be powerless. He looked smaller somehow, sitting at that defendant's table in his prison jumpsuit. The confidence was gone, the charm had evaporated, and all that remained was a broken man who had lost everything because he thought he was smarter than everyone else. When his eyes met mine across the courtroom, I saw something I had never seen before: fear, not the panic he had shown when I found the invitation, but the deep, soul-crushing fear of a man who realized that his actions had consequences. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison. As they led him away in handcuffs, felt something I hadn't expected: pity. Not for what he had lost, but for what he had never understood. He had spent his entire life taking from others, using people, treating human beings like chess pieces in his game, and in the end, it was the people he had underestimated, the most a pregnant woman, and an invisible assistant who brought him down. But this story isn't really about Harrison Vale's downfall. It's about what happened after. With the settlement, money from Harrison's assets, Vivian and I started our own consulting firm. We help other women who have been silenced, overlooked, or underestimated. We use the same skills that brought down a billionaire to expose corruption, fight injustice, and give a voice to people who have been told they don't matter. Vivian gave birth to a beautiful daughter 6 months later. She named her Hope, and she's growing up on that island paradise, surrounded by people who love her and protected by a mother who learned that she deserves better than living in the shadows. Victoria, surprisingly, has become one of our closest allies. She started a foundation for women who have been victims of manipulation and abuse, and she speaks publicly about the importance of believing women when they tell their stories. As for me, I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not the perfect assistant who fetches coffee and pretends not to see what's happening around her. I'm Jasmine Brooks, the woman who brought down Harrison Vale, and I'm just getting started. Because here's what I learned that day on the beach when I decided to fight back. The world is full of powerful people who think they can get away with anything, and they're usually right. But sometimes, just sometimes, they make the mistake of underestimating the wrong person. And when that happens, karma doesn't just knock on the door. It kicks it down, walks in, and makes itself at home. Harrison Vale learned that lesson the hard way. And I have a feeling he's going to have 18 long years to think about it. The powerful stay powerful because people like me stay quiet. But I'm done being quiet. I'm done being invisible. And I'm definitely done letting men like Harrison Vale think they can treat women like disposable objects in their perfect little worlds. Because sometimes the assistant is taking notes, and sometimes she decides to use them.